Hi everybody, let's do an August plan with me and learn how to do some cute dandelion doodles at the same time. You ready? Let's go! This month, as opposed to July, I chose very minimalistic, very muted colors, and so what I did for my spread for August was dandelions. So before I show you my spread, I wanted to show you some dandelion doodles and just break the plant down. So first of all, a dandelion is going to have leaves. It's going to have a bunch of leaves that don't go up very high, but then it's going to have these long sort of stalks where the flowers shoot up. So that's the basic structure of a dandelion plant. When you draw the actual flower, the flower sort of has sections, although it doesn't really look like it at first, but it has sort of an outer ring of petals and then an inner ring of petals, and then it has a middle section where the petals are all really clumped close together. So what you do with the inner section is you just make a bunch. You want this to look rounded because this is where the petals haven't opened up yet, in the middle. And then you're going to make, they have these just really long, thin petals, and there's a reason why it's called a dandelion, because it does look like a lion's mane. So you just draw these long thin petals and then you just keep overlapping them so there looks like there's a bunch of them, and then you start bringing, for this outer circle, you start bringing more petals out from underneath so that you get this overlapping look of all these petals. And just keep filling them in because you want it to look like a mane. You want it to look like a lion's mane, and you want it to be really thick. If you've ever looked at a photograph of a dandelion, these petals, there's just, I mean, you couldn't even count them. There's so many of them. So, and then when you color this, you can do shading and stuff to indicate, but you want this inner part to be pretty tightly together because that's how the flower blooms. That inner part is still sort of clenched together. So then the next part of a dandelion that everybody see a lot of is not so much the bud. The bud is sort of a rounded, a cylinder with like a rounded top like this, and they have these little leaf looking things, and that's what a dandelion bud looks like. So that's how you would do a dandelion bud. But what most people see is after the flower blooms and it's going to get ready to make seeds, it sort of contracts in on itself, and you might see a little bit of yellow left, but you start seeing that sort of cottony fuzz at the top. And again, it has these little leaves. They're green, but I honestly think they're part of the flower. I'm not a botany expert, but anyway. And then we all know the dandelion stem is just a long sort of parallel lines. And depending on the angle that your flower is at, you may want to include the leaves, because these leaves right here, or these little petally looking leaves, are at every stage of the dandelion. So then the next stage of the dandelion is when it has the puffball on it. So, or I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go to when it's the puff has left. What you want to do to make, after all the seeds are gone, you're going to make a little button sort of thing, and it's like a rounded sort of half circle, and the leaves at this point have sort of turned brown, but they're still there. And then you just put a bunch of dots on it from where the seeds used to be, and you can add your stem. So now let's get to the most complicated one, and that's when it's in the puffball state. So you can just, what you want to do here is you want to have an interior circle for where all the seeds are attached, and then you want to draw an exterior circle because dandelions are pretty symmetrical when they're in the puffball stage. So you want to draw the little bean sort of things for the seeds, and you can put them at whatever angle you want. And then you want to take that stem of the seed up and just make as many little fluffy, like I said, I am not a botanist, so I don't know what these are called, little fluffy things that make them float. And you want to fill in this whole circle that you drew and make it really thick. Unless you want your puffball to be raggedy, like the wind has already taken a few away, that's fine too. Because we know nature is not as perfect and manicured as some people might like it to be. And it's a lot of randomness in nature, which in my mind makes it more interesting. Okay, so I have the basics here, but you just keep going, keep filling in, make it look nice and full. And you can, if you want to try and indicate the dimension this way, you can make little dots and stars and indicate the foreshortening of the ones that are facing this way, but I don't bother doing that because this is a doodle and it's not trying to be hyper realistic. But yeah, just keep adding, and you can color these in to make the seeds, and you just keep adding the little. So if you want to indicate these, once the wind has blown them away, you're going to make a little oval shape for the seed, make a stem, and then I just flick my pencil to make it look sort of fuzzy, like what actual dandelion seeds look like, and just fill it in however much suits you. And you do want to get them sort of almost coming out flat because that's the overall shape of the dandelion seed. So those are, if you want to follow along with what I do in my journal, these are some examples of ways you can doodle dandelions. And I totally forgot to talk about leaves, which leaves are a really fun part of dandelions because you can get a lot of motion and expression with the dandelion leaves. So where I start with the dandelion leaves is I just draw the spine, and then I just come and I start, if this is the ground right here, I start and I just come down and you make these like dragon scale looking things. And then you bring it in and you can make them look more raggedy if you want to. But this is the basic shape of a dandelion leaf. We'll make a little one. So they're super fun to draw. And you can make them folded over if you want to. Let's fold. There's a fold on that one. So and if you want to, if you were drawing a thistle, for instance, thistles are prickly. I think they're in the same family as dandelions, maybe. But their leaves look pretty similar, except these are, they would be, have more points and angles on them, and they'd be prickly. Okay, so there's the doodles that we need to do this layout. The first thing I'm going to do is lay out the pens that I'm going to use for this. I usually choose 4 Tombows or 5, depending on how many weeks there are in the month. to be a part of my weekly layouts. And I'm also using some Stettler fine liners for the details in this and some Prismacolors. I'm choosing muted greens and grays in every case in all of these. And I'm going to put the numbers of the Tombows down in the description so you can know which ones I'm using. And the other colors are bright yellow. So the first thing to do, sadly, is to sharpen all my Prismacolors because they don't like using them if they're not super sharp for this purpose. I've already pencil sketched in the dandelion, so this I'm taking my gray Stettler and going over all my lines. I didn't want to make it black, so I used the gray fine liner because I really wanted this design to be soft. And I had already done the headings for the events in the to-do, and I had also already put the calendar in before I started filming this. So this is where I'm using all of the little doodles that I talked about in the first part of the video. And I'm just doing some calligraphy. I think this is the asparagus Tombow. And using muted greens and grays on the leaves, and then the bright yellows on the flowers. Now I'm just coloring in the flowers using the method I showed in the doodle, and I am using two different colors of yellow just to get a little bit more depth and separation of those petals and of the layers of the dandelion blossom. And here I'm just doing some final details. I think I was doing a drop shadow there. And there's how my final spread turned out. And now I'm going to work on my trackers, which I changed them up for the daily tracker depending on what's going on. Like right now we're watering pretty intensely because of summer heat. And here's the final close-up of my spread. I'll go ahead and fill in the events like birthdays, appointments, things happening, and the to-do list at a later date. And I'll also fill out my trackers once I decide what I need to track daily, weekly, and monthly in August. That's all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. And as always, don't be afraid to take a left. Bye.